get going.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Hey, what's up, everybody? It is your boy Lou Martinez, aka Big Chief Burrito, and welcome to another episode of Fireside Chats with Big Chief Burrito. Today, we're going to be talking to somebody that I met recently online because I noticed that they were doing a one-man rendition of one of my favorite movies, The Godfather, basically turning it into a one-man play. And I thought that was incredibly interesting, brave, something that you have to have a lot of patience for. And I reached out to him and he agreed to come talk to me about that, about acting in general, and about just kind of how we're staying creative during this time. So I want to welcome Tom Steward to the show.
Hi, how's it going?
How you doing, brother?
Yeah,
Let's get right into it. You are doing a one-man rendition of an iconic film. Wait, back here, The Godfather, which it's pretty much cemented into the top 5 of most film critics' most iconic movies of all time. Why did you pick that as kind of a vehicle to sort of showcase your talents there?
I suppose it was my familiarity with it. It's a movie I first saw at age probably 12 or 13 on VHS. I just destroyed those tapes, watched them to death. So I thought if I was going to do any kind of project, any film-based project in real time, I was going to need something where I could recall the dialogue, where it was, innate. It was inbuilt already, so that was a big factor. I think also, you mentioned iconic, and I thought the iconography of this movie is familiar to a lot of people, so that gives you that kind of instant hook. I think just before I did this, I started listening to a podcast called Godfather Minute by Andy and Alex Robinson. And it just reminded me, like minute by minute, there's something to talk about. And, there is not a second of this movie wasted. So it would sustain interest for, months and months worth of virtual content.
Did you review the script or rewatch it before you recorded, or are you just going straight off of memory?
Well, I go from memory. I break it down into chunks and memorize those chunks. But I was kind of, watching it and rewatching it on the fly, learning it on the fly.
You didn't record it all at once, did you?
No. When it started, it was the beginning of quarantine, and it was, I was full time looking after my son, who's 3 now. He was like 2.5 then. And it was literally like, okay, he goes down to take a nap. I do my video, put it out the next day, and just keep doing that. And that's all I had time for. It's loosened up a little bit since then, but that was the original idea behind it. That was where this 2.5 minutes a day, 5 days a week came from. It was like, that is literally the only time I have to both film and put these out before my son either wakes up in the morning or wakes up from his nap in the afternoon.
And you could have chosen a shorter movie, right? You could have.
You said brave, and that's exactly it. I like a challenge. I think, with one of the things that has always attracted me to solo theater is it's kind of like a one-person theater. It's like uncharted territory. There's like really obvious ways of doing it as kind of a biography or, telling your story through theater. But I think there's so many ways of doing it that we haven't thought about or we haven't tried out. So, I really wanted to push myself to do this. And, the usual way that you do a film in theater is you condense.
Right.
You get it, you make it smaller so it takes up less stage time. For some reason with The Godfather, I don't know whether it's just, the esteem I held it in. I was like, I can't do this to this movie. This movie, this movie has to be played out in real time as it happens. You would miss too much. You would lose too much of the richness of it if you tried to condense it.
I did know. I mean, one of the first things that I questioned when I first I was like, wow, okay, this is incredibly interesting to me. Like I said, I had VHS copies of 1 and 2, where you had to get up after 2 hours and put the second tape in to
Yeah.
watch it, and that's how and I've watched The Godfather I would say at least 50 to 100 times in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, and even having watching it 50 times, like I couldn't stop watching your videos
All right. Thank you.
because it's so iconic that you're like, oh, he's gonna do the Tom Hagen, Mr. Corleone insists on hearing bad news immediately.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, he's gonna tell but you also had to make interesting. Well, I guess not interesting, but you also had to make choices in what kind of language that you were willing to use and not willing to use. I saw that you had a statement there where you're like, hey, I'm doing this thing, but there's a whole bunch of N words coming up, and I'm just not comfortable, staying in character doing those. I mean, maybe if this was like 5-10 years ago, you might have been able to get away with it more freely. But did the time frame that we're living in today sort of just kind of weigh heavy on that, or because you do take some liberties.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, you're like something in Italian, you're saying, and I think, but you also had to make that choice. What went into that decision for you?
I realized very early on, and this is again about the time we're living in, it's the restrictions that I'm working under are going to define what I produce. And what I can actually do in the time, what I can do in my home, is gonna have such an influence on how I choose to do these iconic moments. And I had a kind of like an epiphany very early on when I was still playing with the idea that I kind of want, I know I'm using kids' toys as props, that's built into the format. But I was like, for a while, I was like, I want these to look like the things that are actually in the movies. And then I realized, that's an impossibility to sustain over 3 hours worth of content. So then the opposite became true. It's like, how far away from the actual thing can I get? McCluskey is a duck in a rubber duck in a police uniform. And once I started to sort of think like that, like, no, it's about what's possible. It's about what I can do in the time. It's about thinking on the fly, being spontaneous, doing, challenging expectations of what people know and expect from these moments. Don't fight that. Actually just kind of go with it. For other projects, I've had to change my facial hair, when I'm not. So when I need to do the Godfather videos, I put on a fake mustache, or I'll, actually have a real mustache. It doesn't matter. In terms, the political side of it is definitely interesting, though. A lot of the conversations that were going around about race were happening exactly the same time that I knew I was going to have to make this decision about whether or not I use the N-word as it is in the movie. And so I put a lot of thought in that, and it made me kind of, reconsider what I'd already done, where, throwing anti-Italian slurs around, anti-Jewish slurs around.
Listen, you crack McFriend.
Yeah. And, so then, I had to think more critically about, what is is that making us? I mean, I'm on the side of it's more important to keep things intact, but just add an introduction or add some context. Like, that's how I think it should work. I'm generally against censorship of things from another era. Just contextualize them, and then that takes care of the problem. But and it's illuminating. But with this, so I had to think a lot about, well, is this is this adding anything? Is it used in a way that it's calling attention to racism, or is it just sort of like ingrained casual racism? And sure, it says a lot about the character of Sonny that he's thrown around these words, but I think there are instances in the movie where the film is calling attention to racist language, and maybe that's not one of them.
Got it.
I think so. Every single one is a judgment call, but it's not actually that long ago in history that these movies were made, and yet, in terms of how people and events are being represented, it's like
There's a movie made in the 70s about the 40s.
Yeah.
So it's when we're watching it for the 100th time in the 2020s. So
yeah. So yeah, and I think about these things. I go back and forth on them. But just the thought process is fascinating.
how long have you been acting?
Since I was a young teenager, with a lot of breaks and gaps in between. I've kind of gone back and forth, and I've always sort of ended up back in acting or some kind of theater or creative.
You got a little bit of an accent. Are you one of these British actors that comes take American roles?
Yeah, no, I am. Yeah, I'm one of those. I'm one of those useless immigrants.
Hey.
The one, I'm the one. I'm the one that they should be throwing out. I'm not. I'm not contributing anything, except taking jobs by doing good dialect work. That's our trick. We do the good dialect work, and then we steal all the jobs. So The Walking Dead is like a bunch of people from Leicester and London pretending to be from the deep south.
What part of are you from?
I am from a small town outside Manchester, small rural town called Saddleworth, which is but it's close enough to Manchester to be sort of fairly connected to.
Is that where you started your training, or was that when you came over here that you began?
My training began early because there was a theater across the street from where I live, and when I say across the street from where I live, I'm talking like I can probably physically give you the steps it took for me to go from there to this theater. So, I would just anything that they were doing there, I would wander in because it was the first place I went when I left my door. And so I did some youth programs. I did some kind of youth summer camps at college. I did student theater. And then I went to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival and did a couple of shows just after I graduated. And then I went away for a long while. And then the last 5 to 10 years have been back solidly trying to do it as a profession again.
Is theater in the UK like let's do anything but Shakespeare, kind of like the thought process there, like or is it kind of just like, all right, we need to do this first, get it out of the way, and then you can move on to other stuff?
I've been away so long from Britain. I'm not qualified really to comment on British theatre, but it seems like there's still a hell of a lot of Shakespeare out there. I think it's
we got this down. Let's move on to something else.
Well, there's like 4 or 5 major theaters around the country that I can think of that are built on the legacy of Shakespeare. Whether they solely do Shakespeare or branch out and do other work. It's a big part, and it's a big part of theatre history in Britain, and people are able to find ways to make it relevant or interesting. But I don't know what the situation is with new work out there. I'm actually know more about how it works out here, weirdly.
Do you remember what your I guess dramatic influences were when you were younger? Like the first time that you saw like an iconic performance? Was it TV? Was it in a theater? That sort of got the bug for you?
It's really funny. I wrote a poem for my local newspaper when I was about, I don't know, 8 or 9. It got published. And there was this whole interview with me. And I read it back, and I apparently I talked about, I don't remember this, but apparently I really idolized Harrison Ford. I mean, I still do idolize Harrison Ford, but I guess that was my formative example of what a great actor is, and it was and it was very much a movie star.
Raiders or Star Wars or
Star Wars for sure. Yeah, Star Wars, Indiana Jones. I think there's those kind of smaller movies that he made that are really really interesting, like Frantic and Presumed Innocent.
regarding
Regarding, that's another one. That's another one I had on VHS.
Henry?
But I think it's weird as well because I sort of see the like I can see the legacy of that in some of the ways that I perform. Like I point a lot when I act.
Mm.
And then I'll watch a Harrison Ford film, and he does the three-way point, the triangular, here and here and here. And I think I got that from him. But definitely, my idea of what a great actor was definitely inspired by Hollywood.
Did you ever watch the YouTube video of the guy that's like 80-year-old Harrison Ford living with like 40-year-old Harrison Ford? He does the two distinct impressions of him.
That's the when I think about Pacino and Nicholson, I think about how these are two entirely different actors separated by about 20-30 years. It's bizarre, it's like you don't I would see, and you can see that in, from Godfather 1 to Godfather 3, if you didn't know that was Al Pacino, you'd think that was a totally different actor playing Michael. By that point, it's just like, it's different guy. So Hollywood movie stars. I was very into the 1950s when I was growing up. I was a very weird teenager. So Elvis, James Dean, Marlon Brando, they were my guys, and I kind of studied them for early technique, I guess.
Did you do On the Waterfront as one of your monologues?
I have done, absolutely, yeah. And The Godfather. There was in the youth theater program that I did at the theater that was on my street. I once hijacked a show and made it scenes from The Godfather, like our end of program show. I hijacked it and wrote out all these. You can you can definitely see a through line here. I hijacked the show and made it scenes from The Godfather. So there are these like 10, 11-year-old kids doing the the scene in Vegas, the scene between Michael and Don Corleone. So I had the impression down, like the Don Vito impression down even then.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was definitely a lot of it came like a lot of actors. It comes through study or physical stuff. For me, it was always about imitating the people that I saw. That's how it always started for me.
I started off as a theater actor, where that got me, and that was in high school. I was an understudy my junior year, and the lead of a musical called Little Me, which was originally written as a piece for what's this guy's name? Actor from the 50s. This is where I Google something and then I cut it out so that I seem smart. Sid Caesar.
Oh, okay, yeah. Wow, okay. I didn't know about that.
Well, Neil Simon wrote it specifically for Sid Caesar because he's basically a girl from the wrong side of the tracks falls in love with this millionaire, and basically she goes off to live her life, and every man in her life is played by the same actor. So it's 9 different characters, and they sing like 18 different songs. And I'm an understudy here in high school in Queens, New York, and all of a sudden, 2 weeks before the show, the lead got kicked out of school, and they're like, "Lou, the part is yours." So I had my first serious acting role was as the lead in a Neil Simon musical called Little Me. And then the next year after that, they did another Neil Simon play, The Odd Couple, and I played Oscar Madison. And then from there, I went on to start kind of studying improv, acting, stuff like that. Realized that But I went seriously at it for a while. I went to the Uta Hagen School in New York. I don't know if you've read her books. I studied underneath her, did some stuff in the Village in New York, did improv, did comedy.
Like
Um,
Brando himself studied
yeah.
under her. Yeah.
And Herbert Big Dog Studios. I was a key student, which meant I didn't have enough money to pay for classes. I would show up, take role after every scene. I would move the props book. I would have to go to the school, I think 3 or 4 times a month, and just do like 2 hours worth of cleaning. Because it's it's a school where it's taught by people that are going to go that night and be on Broadway.
Yeah.
And that's sort of where I made my bones. I give my actors a lot of shit because sometimes I'll write a part in a movie for myself, and I'll shoot it and I'll do it in one take, and then I'll be like, anybody count the number of takes that was? How many?
Mm-hmm.
That was just a one take. Okay, got it. I find that you can motivate your actors either by motivating or by making them hate you. It's the same thing. But my go-to monologue was from Cyrano de Bergerac, which was when I was going on auditions, and it was like this very like ornate, like shattered them all these, in that most precious instinct, I shall take all the words that ever were or weren't in mad armfuls, not bouquets, and smother you. And it was very, very dramatic. But in the end, I realized that I kind of liked being that it was all for me to be. What I really wanted to do was direct. Is the cliche there,
Well, we're like total opposites, because if there's one thing I don't want to do, it's direct.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, I end up directing myself as like a
Yeah.
means to an end, but the idea of I have so much. I think I have so much respect for that job that there's always going to be someone better than me who could do it.
I ran. I got away from acting. I came to California. I got a job running a call center for like 12 years, and I was talking to my friend the other day about this. I trained like 10,000 people in 10 years, and in order to train somebody, you have to meet somebody, figure out their personality type, and figure out a way to motivate them and get them to work for you. And I didn't realize it, but I was putting in my hours on learning personality types, and that made me a better director. Had nothing to do with directing, but just the fact that I can show up on set, meet people, meet an actor, meet my crew, and sort of immediately sort of figure out how to manage them, kind of made me a little bit of a better director.
Oh, but yeah, it's that managerial bit that I feel like I'm totally oblivious to, and I agree. I think all the great directors I know or I'm aware of have that quality.
But I never lost the love for acting. I still, like people still see, some of the stuff, and they're like, "Hey, I got a little part for you here, a little part for you there." I still like to dabble.
Yeah. And I think with writing and producing a lot of my own stuff, which has kind of become essential, especially since quarantine started and the way that the industry is right now. It really is a means to it's like a means to an end. I mean, I do consider myself a writer, but a lot of what I do, at least with my solo work, is about creating work for myself as an actor. So I'm always thinking with those two hats on.
I made a video a few months back. It was actually like Corona tips for actors, and one of the things I mentioned is for actors that this is a perfect time for you to like look back at like parts you wish you would have played, do a ton of self tapes. Like I was literally telling people to do what you're doing, or some sort of version of what you're doing, not exactly, to put in 60 hours on recreating a 50-year-old movie, but I was literally, this is the time where you should be putting yourself on tape. You're sitting at home alone.
Yeah.
One of the most the scariest thing for an actor is to be in a room by themselves and sort of have to put themselves out there like that. I understand self-taping for people is rough, but I think it's a great time for people to how much of this was just you finding a creative outlet?
I'm kind of, I think I'm hypersensitive to like the genre and the medium that I'm working in, and I want to, like, I have this show called The Bond Show, variations of which are a solo show based on the Bond films, which I've been doing for the past few years. And every time I do it in a different form, whether it's live stream or in the theater as a fringe production, I try to change it up. I try to think about, where am I performing? Who am I performing to? What's the format that I'm performing in? And that just changes everything for me. So I had the idea in the back of my mind to do a Godfather-based piece of theater, maybe even just like a Marlon Brando-based piece of theater. But I couldn't think of it's like no one's gonna watch it as a live show for like 3.5 hours at a time. So when the idea, I was thinking, okay, well, I can put out videos 5 times a week for however long it takes to do the movie. So and that's lucky, because it just gifted itself to me that not only could I still do this with quarantine going on, actually this is the perfect vehicle for what I wanted to do. I'll just move it up from wherever it was in the projects I was thinking about. So I think it is about seizing the moment, and realizing you do have the outlets virtually to do what you want to do, but you definitely have to think creatively and critically. And nothing's worse than producing something in the wrong medium, producing something that's not conducive to whatever it is you're using as a vehicle, because it just stands out like a sore thumb. So you've always got to be thinking about, is this working for as a virtual video series? What's the thing that elevates it to that? And that, so yeah, it was there's obviously because I had a San Diego Fringe show that I was lined up to do, that had already been selected for. So there were all these things that were cancelled or potentially cancelled over the next few months. So that was definitely part of it. But I was also thinking, well, let's choose the right project too, and let's use what I have, and don't think about it as limiting or restricting. Think about it as an opportunity to get something you want to do done in the best possible way. There's no other way in which I could conceive doing this project,
right?
Unless as a YouTube video, as a YouTube video.
And I think it'll find more of an audience, I think, once it's all together. Because if you're on YouTube and you're searching Godfather, and all of a sudden you're like, Tom Steward does the entire Godfather, in a one-man show, and they can just watch it one after another. The only thing that's frustrating about that is that I know the movie so well that I'm like, oh, he's gonna cut it off before he gets to, this iconic line or this iconic scene, and right the next day I click on, oh, it's back, So I think that. And I really love the ones where it was 5 in a row, because I could go back and just watch all of them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and as it went on, I realized that there was particular ways to sort of serialize it and do have like playlists for each week and recap, and learning what's the best way to post on Instagram, what's the and YouTube. This is all brand new. Yeah. This is something you discover as you're doing it. Now I'm like coming up to the final week of posting, and I'm only just starting feeling comfortable of like, oh, I'm posting in all the right places, I'm doing all the right things, and it's over. But yeah, there is that potential to see it all as one piece that I'm very excited about putting out there in the world.
I have a couple more questions, and then we can do a deep dive into the actual film, because I want to talk to somebody who loves the movie just as much as I do. The Bond show, it's sort of like I mean, I think it's more, I think it's like a if I had to describe it, it's like a meta homage to Bond films, sort of.
That's the best description I've ever heard of it, and I'm not bullshitting you there at all. That it's
not very wink, wink, nudge, nudge, say no more. It's very,
It's because it's not quite, it's a recap of the films. You if you don't know the films, then you get the gist. You get the gist of each of the Bond films. But it's also a commentary on them. It's a critique of them. It's a satire of them. So yeah, meta homage is a great term because it's got that balance of which I think is really important in any kind of like fan art. Of you've got that distance from the thing that you have this reverence for, whether that's through comedy or that's through criticizing the politics of it, which both there's great potential for both in the Bond film series. And also you thought that was important to do as a contemporary piece about the Bond films. It's like a lot of the things we see in the Bond films are not okay. And, I get like, instead of glossing over that, you put it front and center and you can make people laugh about it. Well, at the same time, you're celebrating the things that also deserve to be highlighted as, I think in the program for the show at one point I put that like this apart from Shakespeare is maybe Britain's biggest cultural export of modern times.
Monty Python, though.
Yeah, I mean, that's up. But like in terms of Monty Python, yeah, but the squares don't like Monty Python,
right?
In the same way that the Bond will always find an audience among people, no matter how conservative or liberal or.
Who's your favorite Bond?
Oh, this is depressing. Timothy Dalton is my favorite Bond.
Tim Dalton.
Yeah. There's a lot of love for him in recent years. I would always feel that when I do the show. There's a lot of love for him in recent years, but people are kind of disappointed when I say that. But I also, because I love the Bond books as much as I love the Bond films, and I think if you feel that way, Dalton is probably your man because he's representative of both in a way that the others aren't necessarily. Daniel Craig a little bit, but I'm in that minority who thinks Daniel Craig is doing a Tim Dalton impression.
Hey. Actually, Tom, the right answer was Idris Elba. Let's stay woke. Thank you very much. Hashtag make Idris Elba Bond.
I fell into that trap, and here I'm going on about how progressive my show is, and yeah.
Okay, and then some people have this question that when they have kids, which is, when am I gonna show my kids Star Wars? When do you think that it would be the appropriate time for you to expose your child to the Godfather saga?
Probably older than me when I first saw it. So
right,
which was, I would say maybe even 11,
somewhere around there. Sit down, son. We're gonna talk about something. Give you some context.
Yeah, I might show them Godfather 3 at like 10. Because that's a lot less. That's like a nice. That's the first one I saw, and it's a nice little. I think you get a flavor of it, and if you want to.
I mean, GF3 gets I don't know if it's a bum rap, because when you compare it to 1 and 2, it obviously pales in comparison, I think. But there's parts of that movie that are well done.
Definitely.
I think the storyline itself, Immobiliati, this Pope's got powerful enemies. That stuff is good. But then, I think like Joey Zaza is like probably the worst character name in a movie ever. And I think it feels like a draft one name. Oh, what's this Italian gangster name? Let's call him Joey Zaza. We'll go back and change it later. But then they never went back and changed it.
Yeah. So I would probably be. You see, the thing that if I have a very smart kid, and it's smart, and I mean both in the intellectual sense and also that he's a great manipulator. So what I did when I was a teenager is, I asked my parents to see all these films. They recorded them off the TV, and they would, they had to vet the movies before I saw them. But what I did was I asked them to record so many movies like 2-3 a day, that they couldn't possibly have time to watch them. And so most of the time they would just go, oh, just watch, Goodfellas, just go for it, whatever. I don't have the time. So I have a feeling my kid will figure out some kind of loophole in which he'll be able to see it at like age 8 or something. At the rate he's going, that would not surprise me.
And then tell me about Lonesome Whistle Productions. Is that your production company, or is that kind of like your brand, so to speak?
It's both. I mean, it's a few years ago, after when we had our first kid, like I'd gone from working all the time in theater to like zero. Like whatever it was, that few months of not working, you go straight to the back of the line. No matter what connections you've made, it's like, oof. So, I had to make work for myself. And when you submit yourself to fringe shows like San Diego International Fringe, they ask for like a company name or an artist name. And I thought, okay, so let's I want to do one person shows. I want to do one person vehicles for myself. Let's craft a brand and a production company around that. So its priority is solo theater, but we've also, we've done like a 5-person comedy piece called Space Force in the middle of all of that. So there's room to kind of branch out, but yeah, it's to develop innovative 1-person shows, but also, if there is like, if there is new work and new voices out there, we'll do other things. We're really, and this is completely by accident, apart from the fact that I'm running it, is that we're very cinematic. What we do is like a theater version of some big pop culture, usually cinematic thing in every instance.
Did you ever watch the HBO show Barry?
Certainly did.
Which is it's LA theater, which is just movies on stage, right? Kind of that sort of thing.
There was a great gag in one of the earlier episodes where in a stage class they were doing monologues from the movie version of Glengarry Glen Ross,
right?
Which I think it just sort of says it all about that kind of film centric
first place Cadillac.
but we're kind of like, we keep falling back on cinema and big pop culture brands, but it won't necessarily always be like that.
Makes sense. And I want to talk a little bit more about the difference between theater acting and cinematic acting. And I want to do a deep dive into Godfather in a second, but we're going to take a quick break.
All right.
When we come back, we're going to talk with Tom some more, Lonesome Whistle Productions. Make sure that you check out his YouTube channel, where within about a week, you're going to be able to watch him do the entire Godfather saga from part 1 in little takes. Do you usually do one take of those, or how many times do you have to do multiple takes?
One take is the aim, but I generally never do more than 3.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really important for me to keep it as kind of continuous and live feeling as possible. So going back and doing it again and again is not
doesn't feel right.
Doesn't feel right, and I don't have the time.
Yeah, all right. We're gonna take a quick break here. We'll be back with more fireside chats with Big Chief Burrito. All right, here, and we are back. We're talking Godfather with Tom Steward, Lonesome Whistle Productions. We talked a little bit about your dramatic and acting influences, your start, and why you decided to take on this project. I always think, from my perspective as a director, that I love working with theater actors because they have a good sense of marks. They're very good with their marks. And usually one of the first things that I have to do to a theater actor is just have them bring themselves down a little bit. They always show up, they hit their mark, and they're right here, you know? And then if you can sort of bring them back a little bit and to kind of, listen, we're going to do multiple takes with multiple angles of this. So, you need to conserve that energy. Given a choice, Tom, right now, right? Guy shows up, says, Tom, I got two options for you. All right.
Yeah.
All right. You are the fourth lead on like a $30 million action movie. You're like the tech guy that lives in his grandma's basement. Right,
Warlock from Die Hard 4.0.
Right,
yeah, okay,
basically, that's one of the new sort of cinema cliches. There's only one hacker in the world that can do this, and he's always in the bottom. He's always in the basement, and his grandma's upstairs. All right,
some variation of Kevin Smith.
Yeah, some variation of Kevin Smith there, and it's in like 18 different movies. There's only one hacker in the world that can do this. So you get to play that role, right? Fourth billing major Hollywood movie, or you get like a 12-week run on Broadway. Maybe you South Pacific or something big. Second billing marquee Broadway, 12 weeks, or fourth lead action movie. What do you choose?
I'd take the action movie fourth lead. Okay. Because I would be better for the other part, 100%. But if they're offering it to me, I'll take it, because as a connoisseur of movies, that's too great an opportunity to pass up.
Couldn't pass it up, right? Couldn't pass it up.
Yeah, and that's It's a weird situation, because I know I'm better in the theater, partly because of the reaction I get versus when I do film. But I'm aware of that in myself. But there is something about movies, big movies, that is a kind of immortality you couldn't really turn down. Going back to Sid Caesar, that was always the big question with Sid Caesar. He had all this amazing talent that he put it all into live TV, which, a lot of it wasn't being recorded. Once it was gone, it was gone forever. And, if he'd have made that leap into movies, he would have been seen in a very different way now. And a character actor, to be a supporting character actor in a Hollywood movie, I think is a noble goal for any actor, because those are some of the best actors that have ever existed.
Plus, if they paid the same, it would be maybe like you have to do 12 weeks, 6 shows a week versus 6 days on set. Yeah. So.
Well, when I have the same feeling when I'm doing film, I want to be in theater. When I'm doing theater, I want to be in film, because it is pros and cons. It's just how you feel at a particular moment about what it is you're doing. But overall, in terms of in terms of what's the best option for you as the person employing me, definitely theater. You'll get a better performance out of me, and you'll have to rain down a big performance. You'll just have to just set me off like an Energizer bunny. Just let me go. Yeah.
All right, let's dive deep into Godfather. I rewatched it again for like the 100th time a couple of ways. I actually had never watched the deleted scenes until today. For some reason, I just, even though I'm always a big fan of director's cuts and stuff like that, I hadn't really watched any. Out of all the deleted scenes I saw, I thought maybe 1 or 2 probably I would have wanted to see in there. Yeah. But for the most part, I understood most of the cuts. you know, they added some stuff, but it wasn't something so monumentous. I think some of the Michael stuff when he's with Kay, the scene where he's like telling him, you promised to keep the peace, but I didn't promise to keep the peace. That stuff's there. But overall, I didn't feel like I was missing too much. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. We've done for the Godfather One part, we've done a couple of live weeks, and I didn't want to break the flow of what we were doing in the main event, so I just did deleted scenes live for that week, and I'm just transcribing the second round of them right now and talking about exactly the scene you just talked about with Michael and the Don. And what I realized, I think, was that leaving a lot of that stuff on the cutting room floor actually really helps the complexity of the movie and makes certain things ambiguous. That the deleted scenes kind of clarify things, but I think part of the beauty of this movie is that there's so much you have to kind of figure out on your own, and you can sort of figure it in so many different ways, what people are thinking. But the deleted scenes kind of make it crystal clear what everyone's thinking, and that's a problem.
Yeah, because one of the themes because I think The Godfather is such a great movie because you can see so much on a rewatch and you see new things every time. And one of the key, I guess, themes that I noticed in subsequent viewings was that a lot of it was about the distance between people and time between when they saw each other last. So, like Casey's Michael, but then she doesn't see him again for several years and he's a different person. They haven't seen Michael for a few years because he's been at war and he's like a different person. There's a lot of sort of, we live in this sort of instant gratification world where we get everything at us. And if you're like, man, I haven't talked to my old friend from high school in 17 years, well, I can do that right this second. I can message him right now. Hey, how you doing, buddy? And I've done that. People that I'm like, hey, man, I haven't talked to you in forever. Just checking in. How's your family doing, right?
Yeah, and I love the fact that going through this movie sort of a few minutes at a time, you realize that there are minutes of time that there are parts of the movie that are played out almost in real time, and then we have huge gaps of 5 years, 10 years that are literally, eclipsed in a second. And that tension, that interplay is what makes it such a compelling structure, because, you make those, it's like the Sollozzo Sollozzo McCluskey assassination scene, takes much longer than it would in any other movie. And yet, there's like a very important 5 years of everyone's life that just disappears, that we see none of. And those choices, those choices are made by a filmmaker at the top of his game. And I think that's like at the height of his powers. He can make those judgment calls about, we need to go into like, ant-like detail of we need to magnify this to the extreme. We can forget about all the how Michael actually becomes the head of the family. It doesn't matter, let's just assume he does. It's more interesting what happens after that.
And when you consider the amount of crap they were giving Francis Ford Coppola during the filming, they tried to fire him like 2 or 3 different times. Marlon Brando had to say, if you hire another director, I'm walking. Like it seemed to be like, plus, they first were like, hey, we want a 2-hour cut of the movie, and then they saw the 2-hour cut and they're like, no, we want a longer cut of the movie. So yeah, if you ever get a chance, I don't know if you've watched this because it's similar to what you're doing, but there's a video on Howard. I don't know if you've listened to Howard Stern or watched his clip. But he interviewed Francis Ford Coppola once,
I've never seen that.
And yeah, it's one of I re-listen every time it comes up because they play like old interviews. Sometimes I go back and watch it, but I'm pretty sure it's on YouTube. And Artie Lang, who was his sidekick at the time, is somebody that always quotes Godfather. He'll go into like monologues and stuff like that. And he's like Artie can do Godfather word for word, and he's sitting there and he's like, pick a scene, the scene where this and this, and he's basically doing Godfather live in front of Francis Ford Coppola, and Francis is like correcting his word. No, I said this instead of that. He's like, and it's really cool. It's a really cool interview. I recommend that you go back and watch it. It's pretty.
Yeah, there's really something in this idea of like of how you individually retell this movie and bring your own, put your own spin on it. There's an episode of The Simpsons I remember where Mo, the bartender's looking after Maggie.
Mm-hmm.
He's babysitting her, and he's trying to think of a bedtime story to tell her, and like he starts to tell her the story of the Godfather and using like all that was probably where I got it from. She's using all her toys. It's like, hey Tessie, I won't see him no more, and that like throwing them out of the way. So there is something like uniquely wonderful about retelling this great magisterial thing. But it does have that kind of like folklore quality as a story. It's been traced back to King Lear. There's a lot of there's the story it actually tells of the mafia, which is mythic in itself. There's the story it tells of America, the greater myth of the American dream that's in there. There's real history, there's made up history. It's a beautiful mix of storytelling.
And one of the other things that I noticed the last time I watched it, which I guess I kind of knew, but it's kind of foreshadowing, which is when at the beginning in the wedding scene where Polly is like, "Maron the money," and he's like, "It's that $30,000 in small bills. If this wasn't, which when you watch it the first couple of times, you're just like, but then when you realize he betrayed Pop, and they ended up taking him out, you're like, okay, that gives me a little foreshadowing about his character's sort of intentions right there.
Yeah,
not as hard as when like not as hard as, I don't know if you like $1 Million Baby, where they just sort of like they put that that little stool, that's going to be they just show it to you, and by the time it actually happens, you're like programmed like a dog, like, oh, the stool. That's like over the top foreshadowing, but this is sort of like more subtle, right?
Yeah, it's just throwing. Yeah, definitely more subtle. I think there are so many unremarkable moments that gain significance by the end of the movie. I think it's so, I'm trying to think of examples, but that's a great one. But it's so so beautifully done in that respect. And then you get the opposite side of the scale, and in Godfather Minute, they're around the time of Tessio's portrayal right now, and that they've counted up that we've heard that whoever comes to you with the meaning about Barzini is the traitor about 4 times in 2 minutes. So there's still that kind of older Hollywood, make sure the stupid people in the audience know what's going on, but at the same time, yeah, it's able to do that in ways that are interesting. My favorite, I've got a great example of it. Leading up to the Sollozzo murder, they keep telling you how Clemenza keeps schooling Michael on how to do it. He says, you drop the gun straight away, you go out, you leave.
You don't look at anybody, but you don't look them away.
Yeah. And then when it gets to that moment, you've heard it so many times, you assume he's going to do exactly that. And then
he doesn't do it exactly. Like he kind of tosses the gun, like he. And
at that point, you're like, what is going to happen? I've been prepared for one thing, we're giving another. So they're able to play with both sides of that. And yeah.
What do you think, this is the Army? We can shoot them out of the way. You got to get up close and bada bing! All over Ivy League suits.
That's wonderful.
No, I also, Sonny showing his hand at the meeting with the Turk the first time, where you're saying, what are you saying? You're saying that the Taglias are gonna guarantee our investment, and then that sort of gives gives the Turk sort of the insight that, oh, if I get rid of the Godfather, Sonny's hot on the deal. You know what I mean? So
yeah, these tiny moments that have this huge chain reaction throughout the movie. These cataclysmic events that all come from one or two, these giveaways. I don't know if we ever know how Don Corleone knows it's Barzini. I've never figured that out. But
I was about to say, because that's something that always like struck me as like he's in the car with Tom and he's like, I didn't realize it till right now, But I think in the Five Families meeting, Tataglia and Barzini, I guess he sends a guy over to him and he sort of, so while the Don is talking, we sort of see these sort of throwaway shots of people like going and tapping him on the shoulder and this and that. So I guess it's sort of, the only thing I can figure out is that's kind of what gives it away, because I must have strict assurances that as his position grows, and then he's over there tapping him on the shoulder. Today they would have been like texting each other.
Yeah.
SMS message from Barzini to Tataglia. Make sure you get strict assurance.
I always assumed it was like, he just looked at Philip Tataglia and was like, oh yeah, this guy's a fool. I totally forgot he's got the comb over and it's not him.
This guy's he could have never outfought Santino.
Or maybe he thought it was like a different Tattaglia. It's like, oh, that's Tattaglia? Oh no, it's not him.
I did comment on your thing last time because I did feel that to some degree, especially when you see the fact that Tessio was with the Don since the very beginning, that part of, I don't want to get into like, hey, should we question Michael's, leadership or whatnot, but Michael does seem to be okay with collateral damage as long as he gets what he wants. And he put those things in motion, basically saying, well, we're just going to wait to see who betrays us. And then, Tessio was always smart, the whole thing. But I don't know. I think if maybe the Don was alive, then maybe Tessio could have gotten the pass. Maybe it would have been like, yeah, Tessio's been with me since the beginning, blah, blah, blah. But that part always rubbed me a little bit like, this guy's literally one of your three founding members. That's sort of always got me a little bit.
I agree. It's a really tragic moment for all those reasons. Also, there's a kind of unspoken attachment between Tessio and Michael as well, and it comes out more in the deleted scenes as well. You get the sense of he's like he sees Michael as like the son he never had.
Did you ever read the book?
Yeah, I've read it a few times.
I did not. That's why I'm a strictly movie. Usually, I try to pick a lane for projects. Either I'll read the book or the movie, or I have an order. Usually, I like to if there's a movie and a book, I'll watch the movie first because then I feel the book is enhanced afterwards because it gives me more depth. But in this instance, the movie rights were bought when the book was a 20-page outline. So I think it's a weird it's weird that I don't know. For me, it's a little bit weird.
Yeah, I think Mario Puzo is a much better screenwriter than he is a novelist. I think his ability to write with Coppola is Coppola is what he needs in a screenwriting partner, and just a kind of interpreter. There is, I don't know if it's still in print, but there is Francis Ford Coppola's notebook on the script, and you see his handwritten notes on the novel itself, and you can see him picking out these moments of like, this is what this scene is about, or this is what this moment is about, and in every single instance he's right, and you realize that the book is kind of flabby. It's this kind of extraneous detail it doesn't need, and so Coppola as a screenwriting partner and a director was just able to cut to the chase every single time. It's like, and his ability to sort of pick moments that were in the book and either reorder them or re-emphasize them as more important or less important. That's what makes, that is what makes the and probably, and I'm sure this has been said before, but Coppola probably understood the story better than Puzo did. Understood what it was supposed to be. I mean, I think he saw it I think Puzo saw it as a crime story, as Coppola saw it as something that was more political, grander, more epic in meaning than just this kind of like.
He treated it more like an allegory, I guess, so to speak.
He did.
Capitalism.
Unless this. I mean, it's still a fascination with American organized crime, but in a less kind of titillating way, and more of a kind of like, what do these guys represent? Like, what do they mean in the big picture? Whereas, Puzo kind of weighs it down with a lot of kind of historical stuff and biographical things that can get quite tedious. And I think Coppola is much better at streamlining that. Saying that about 3.5, like a 3-hour movie, but still, I don't think there's a moment of that movie wasted. So,
no, I have a question. If I ever get to interview Francis Ford Coppola, and I want to piss him off so much that he ends the interview, you want to hear what that question would be?
Go for it.
When did you realize your daughter was a better director than you?
Oh, forget it.
If I ever want to piss off Francis Ford Coppola, although I think from his perspective, I don't think he would necessarily balk at that question.
Absolutely not. No, I think he'd be up for nice things being said about his daughter after 20 years of people trashing her performance.
She's as an actress, she's an incredible director.
Hey, she was great as the baby in the baptism sequence.
She did a good job.
She cried at the right time. She was just loud enough, not too quiet.
What was your favorite character to recreate when you were doing this?
And it's kind of obvious to say the Don, just because the impersonation comes so natural to me. I just move my face in a certain position. And that's it. That's it. I was like, what are you gonna do? But as it went on, and again, so much of what I do is about caricature and exaggeration of like one or two things that the actor does or the character does. So I really enjoy every time Tom Hagen.
Yeah, I was about to say I liked your Tom Hagen.
Because you
were just like, ooh, you just gave him that voice, and you're just
and he's only like that when that's the trick, because he's only like that when he's shouting. But I was like, I'm just gonna, it differentiates it much better if he's always talking like this. Sonny and the rising and the up and
this is 1947, Sonny, when nobody wants a war.
So I really and he has this kind of I don't know if it's a character thing or just his own sort of facial tick, but he sort of chaps his lips after speaking sometimes, so he'll finish a line and go. So that's a gift if you're doing any kind of impersonation. There's been so many impersonations that I've kind of had that have got better as I've gone on with the movie, and that one is kind of like Commenza. I was doing it more like a gruff sound, but it's all in the lips. It's all here. Yeah,
this thing's gonna happen every couple of years. It's been like 10 years since the last one.
Leave the gun, take the cannoli. It's just it's like you've got to make yourself like stationary and just use your lips to speak, like no other movement, and then Clemenza will come out, and that's actually one of the deleted scenes, which definitely should have been.
Talking about the bumper?
The bumper, but certainly when he leaves in the middle of a hit to go and eat a full meal in a restaurant.
Oh yeah. He's there. Yeah, I'm gonna go talk to him. He's talking my eye.
He was talking my ear off. He was talking my ear off. So those are always fun to do. Fredo's always fun to do, but you've got so much to work with. Yeah.
As always, I was like, how is he gonna do the Fredo line? Because
Yeah.
that always like came out of left field after he
Yeah.
gets shot. Pop pop.
Yeah.
It just always like hits me so hard.
And then when he just says, hey, 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 in like succession 6-7 times, it's beautiful.
You don't come to Las Vegas and talk to a man like No Green like that.
God, Alex Rocco's voice is so hard to imitate because it's not quite gravelly. It's just this sort of like bass sound. So you gotta get laid. You gotta get laid. But even that's not there. Hey, everybody's here, Tom. You know, it's really there's so many great character voices in this movie to try and pull off. And you know, I do my usual kind of 50% impersonation rate. It's pretty good.
The saga of the Godfather. I mean, obviously, Godfather 2 gets talked about as almost. I still like Godfather 1. If I had to place them, I still think Godfather 1 is a little bit better than Godfather 2. Godfather 2 is incredible. But it's sometimes often commentated as one of the best sequels, obviously. And I don't go as far as to say that it's one of the sequels that's better than the original. But it gets damn near close.
Yeah.
Did you always know you wanted to do 1? Was there a part of you that was like, well, 2 is a more complete kind of saga of them both? And there's also people that watch like the intercut version that's out there where it's kind of in chronological order. Did you have any thoughts about that?
I'm not ruling out doing something on Godfather 2, but it would be very different from this. I absolutely agree with everything that you say. It's not a sequel that's better than the original. A greater film as it is, and the first one just has a kind of a kind of quality that the balance of everything is just the chemistry of it is right in a way that partly kind of in the second movie is sort of byproduct of cutting between time periods a lot. You don't get that intimacy that you have in the first film, I think.
I think Francis Ford Coppola was basically flexing his muscles on part 2, because I think one of my favorite shots of cinema of all time is the Ellis Island shot, where it's the tracking shot and you have all these people and she's just sort of just coming, and just to have the balls for such a short sequence to say this I need 400 extras in Ellis Island, because I need to get this, and they're all different ethnicities and the whole thing. It's so beautifully recreated. I think Godfather 2 is Francis just like flexing just on him, like, I got full creative control. I already did number 1. I'm not going to get fired off of this thing, and I'm just going to make this 6-hour epic, and then just kind of flex.
Yeah, and I mean, I've only watched the saga. There's the trilogy and the saga version. I think I've watched, which is the complete the 1 and 2 chronologically, and I've kind of I think I've seen it once or twice, and I was fully prepared to sort of like, I'll dip in and out, or maybe I'll skip to certain bits. No, I watched the whole thing.
Right.
I was captivated by the whole thing, and and maybe 1 or 2 scenes added in that I'd never seen before, but the majority of it I've seen hundreds of times. I think it's a foolproof story. You could sort of put it in any kind of format and it would still play, because the quality of what you're actually watching is so beautifully done. It also benefits from not having to break up that first movie in a way that you have to do with the second one, I think. So you're just like, for a period of time, you're watching the whole of The Godfather if you do it chronologically. So that helps. If you to break up that movie, I'd probably like it less.
The rumor was that part 4 was supposed to be the new Don going up against like a bunch of and I, because I'm Colombian, so I was like, oh, it's supposed to be The Godfather, but they were going to be fighting against like the Medellin cartel and it was going to be intercut with, which I think is the most interesting time frame that's not covered by any of the films, which is the rise of the Godfather, and from after he kills Don Fanucci and he starts Genco olive oil and stuff like that to present day. Those 10-15 years where the Don consolidates his power. Luca Brasi killing the guys from Chicago, all this other stuff seems to be that part was more interesting. The other part, I think, of the Godfather, what's the actor that played him? Alec. He also got nominated for an Oscar, right, for Godfather 3.
Andy Garcia? No.
Yeah, Andy Garcia.
Oh, yeah.
Andy Garcia going up against a bunch of different stuff like that, and I think that it would have been and then obviously Mario Puzo died while they were sort of kind of plotting this out, and it never went anywhere. And it also would have been like two intercut back and forth with De Niro and stuff like that, which they say they still have the rights to it, but unless they de-aged De Niro, which did not work in his last movie.
No, it's creepy, really creepy.
It just because he was supposed to be like a 30-year-old dude. He was like, he walking around like he had a bad hip, and it was very disconcerting.
With the eyes of a cat.
Yeah, no, it was bad. But I think that time period, if for example you're like, okay, you can have a movie, it would either be that time period, but also if we're talking about cinema history, it's almost similar to the I don't know why they haven't made a movie about Darth Vader from after the time that he becomes Darth Vader until those 10-15 years, like his consolidation and rise to power and being feared across an empire. Those are kind of missed. I think they'll probably still do this, because they're going to make a million more Star Wars movie. They'll probably end up making something like that, because that little section of Darth Vader in Rogue One was almost the best part of the movie, when they were just showing badass Darth Vader, But do you think that they'll eventually sort of add to the Godfather saga?
Probably in the way you describe of going back to the late 20s, early 30s. I mean, that seems right, not just because of there's a lot of untold story in there. There's a whole gang war that we've only heard about and we've never seen. Clemenza says, it's been 10 years since the last one, so we'd see that. Sonny making his bones and, that kind of thing. So, but also because it's the 30s, which is, the original period of gangster movies. So it seems like, in the right person's hands, that'd be great. The only other period, I mean, this is where it's definitely a missed opportunity, and you couldn't do it without significant recasting. But if you picked up from the end of Godfather 2 and the late 50s, past Cuba, you've got the Kennedy assassination, the mafia's involvement in that. Sadly, we never resolved the end of Godfather 2 suggests that Tom Hagen and Al Pacino are headed for another power struggle, essentially. Right. There's a scene which kind of very clearly indicates that, Tom is on his last warning when it comes to straying outside the family. And so I'm sure they would have resolved that in Godfather 3 if Duvall had been involved. But so I think you could play both, both those things and have the backdrop of the Kennedy assassination like you had Cuba in Godfather 2. So that's another way of doing it. But that really is like an imaginary universe where they make a Godfather 3 like 2 years after Godfather in like 76.
Right.
In a world in which Francis Ford Coppola is not in the Philippines trying to make Apocalypse Now for 5 years.
Oh yeah, or if I wonder if they offered the Godfather remake to Sofia Coppola, if she would do it. Probably not. I don't think she would want to step over her dad's toes.
I'd love to see her do a movie about the women of the Godfather that have been really underrepresented, like Kay, or even go back to Mary with a different actor. I think there's definitely. I think you bring up Star Wars, and I think there is this. the Sopranos at the moment are kind of doing well. I mean, that's done and dusted. We know that, and Gandolfini's death just kind of, was just confirmation that they were done. But now they're doing a movie which is not quite a prequel, but involves some
The Many Saints of Newark.
The Many Saints of Newark, but involves some of the characters that we've seen in The Sopranos. And the Godfather universe is bigger than even the books. So Mario Puzo put characters from The Godfather in a lot of his other novels, a lot of the movies that were based on those movies contain Godfather characters or references to Godfather characters. So there is definitely a way to open up this Godfather universe in a way that doesn't step on the toes of the original movies. Mm-hmm. I would like to see them do something with it, but they would have to play a very careful game where they weren't making a sequel or a prequel. They were just making a
standalone.
A gangster film with some characters or nods to
Godfather universe, so to speak.
Yeah, I think they could pull that off very easily.
All right, Tom, we're going to take one more break and then wrap this up. We're talking Godfather, Godfather Saga, acting and cinema in general with Mr. Tom Steward. We will come back and wrap this up. I have a couple more questions that I've come up with as we were talking. Nice. And then we will let you go, Tom, all right? But we'll take a quick break and then we'll be back.
All right.
Told you I'm a huge Godfather nerd, so for me it was just like, yeah, I can talk to this guy about Godfather for 2 hours, no problem. That's like it's nothing to me,
Likewise.
I was just like, hey, let's see, and like I said, I really enjoy the creativity and the guts that it takes to do something like that, commit to it. So obviously from a perspective of a filmmaker, a fan of the film and stuff like that, and a fan of acting, obviously, I was just like, okay, cool. This guy seems like he's, just putting stuff out there, which is, like I said, brave, a little crazy. Mm-hmm. Well, we all get a little nuts sometimes, right?
That's right.
All right, we're gonna be back. All right. All right, and we are back. As everybody knows, segment 3 is when we turn the tables on our guests and see if they have anything that they would want to ask me. Tom doesn't know me from a hole in the wall, but Tom, do you have any questions or topics you want to bring up?
I want to know more about your back catalog and your filmmaking.
I have made probably, I want to say, well, I have 2 features. One feature we made here in San Diego called Blacklisted. We made it about 5 years ago. We had 130 actors that we made SAG eligible through it. Ultra low budget. We made it for less than $50,000. Basically, but when I edited it together, it was like a 2.5 hour monstrosity because I was writing the scenes as we were shooting. So I was like, okay, we have Mr. X, the bad guy, and this guy, they have a scene next week, or we have a scene that shows how he came to power. And basically I was writing the scenes sort of leading up to each scene and trying to put them together in the context. So really what it is a 2.5 hour basically synopsis of what the project would be in like a season 1. Mm-hmm. So there's a 2.5 hour movie, but it doesn't, the individual scenes are better than the whole. And so it's out there as like an intellectual property that would show like a Netflix or somebody, like if we had a chance to redo this would be the sort of the storyline over a full season. Mm-hmm. And then I did a romantic comedy a couple of years after that's called Slapworthy, that got into some festivals. And that one was more a personal sort of rom-com. And then I have about 15 to 20 short films that I've directed. Maybe 4 or 5 that have been part of like 48, 72-hour film festivals. The rest that are just kind of the rest that are just sort of projects that came together that either I wrote. I've only done stuff that I have either written or my roommate, who is my writing partner. It's either something that he wrote, who's a part of the other part of 2 a.m. Burrito.
Yeah.
And then 2 a.m. Burrito in itself is, kind of just, a time and a place, I guess, so to speak. It's a very California thing, in San Diego, when you're out drinking or out at the casino and you're heading home and it's 2 a.m, it's like, hey, it's burrito time. If this was New York, it would be pizza. If this was TJ, it would be tacos, or bacon wrapped hot dogs. If this was, London, or it might be something else, I would assume, fish and chip. Yeah, kebab or fish and chips or something, or it depends. So we wanted to go with like a silly name for the production company. But yeah, I'm a writer, director, actor, and I did me and my friend Ty Mabry a few years back, we had a podcast called Indie Apocalypse, which was about independent filmmaking with San Diego as a case study. And I really enjoyed the process of sort of researching somebody, asking questions, interviewing stuff. And we did about 100 episodes.
Whoa.
Just mostly, like I said, San Diego as a case study for independent filmmaking. During the quarantine hit, and I'm at home taking care of my dad, who's 89. And I work from home, and much like you, I wanted an outlet for my creativity, because I couldn't really. I have a feature that's ready to go. I just need money and time. But right now, I was like, I wanted to start making content for YouTube and for podcasts and for stuff like that, to sort of just put myself out there a little bit more as a brand. And I figured I've made enough movies, I made enough mistakes as a filmmaker. I have enough of a love of movies that I can kind of sit down and talk to people. This particular sort of thing, Fireside Chats with Big Chief Burrito, is just maybe, as opposed to my podcast, as opposed to my YouTube videos, we also have something called Ed Wood Film School, because it's, I figure Ed Wood is the original guerrilla filmmaker.
That's right.
And so we try to embody that in terms of getting shit done. But yeah, I have some credits under my belt. I want to get more out there. Obviously, my goal is to win an Oscar someday, and direct more big budget films. But it's, making movies, making art, making content is my art. I can't see myself stopping to do it. I'll be directing as much as possible moving forward. But right now, I think this allows me to, number one, have human interaction with people, because I'm, stuck at home. Number two, I love having these kind of interesting conversations about stuff that I'm passionate about, and learning about stuff that I don't know shit about as well. But I'm here to learn and talk to people, and just sort of expand my mind and to stay creative.
Yeah.
So that's my backstory.
Happy to hear it. Okay. Now I got a really hard question.
Sure.
Clemenza or Pentangeli?
Clemenza or Pentangeli? If one of them had to go, like if it's like a Sophie's Choice type situation.
You got it. Yeah.
They said Michael Corleone did this. They said Michael Corleone did that.
They got me waiting in the lobby.
But it was all lies, all of it. Oh man.
Isn't that a hard question?
Yeah, Pentangeli just had to see his brother walk into the courtroom for 2 seconds. He flew out here at his own expense to aid his brother. We have the affidavits. We have them. Man, Clemenza is such a writer, though. Clemenza's been there since the beginning. If you watch the deleted scenes, it's almost like, how did Vito, take control over the early Enterprise? Because Clemenza was the guy in the mix. He was the guy in the know early on.
And there's only one Pentangeli, but there's two Clemenzas.
You got double Clemenza. Well, triple, right? Because you have the one in the past time frame as well. Oh, right. You get the two actors and then the one from the past. I think if one of them had to go, Pantangeli, he took that L from the Rosado brothers. I told you this before, but whenever we're on set, like, and it's like a 14-hour set, and it's like we got like second meal, and I ordered pizza and coffee for everybody because we still just got to stay here and knock shit out.
Mhm.
And when everybody's sitting around, I'll eat my burrito, and then as everybody's sitting there, I'll do the Hyman Roth speech. This is the business we have chosen, because I think it's appropriate. I just want to get to that line, but it's so fun to see the blank stares of actors who've never seen The Godfather just looking at them.
That's
because
really
I'll just walk up to them and I'll be like, your father and I,
in the truck, owned by your father.
Your brother arrived on a plane today. Oh, but my favorite part is there was this kid that I knew, grew up with me, made our bones together. He thought about creating a city out of a bus stop that GIs would use on the layovers on the way to Chicago. That city was Las Vegas, and that man was Mo Green. And there's not a statue. Somebody put a bullet in his eye. I didn't ask who gave the order, because I knew it had nothing to do with business. I said to myself, this is the business we have chosen. And then everybody looks at me and they're like, what, are we going to film again, Lou? And then I'm just like, scene.
Do you add in the neck cuffs as well in between each line? This is the business we have chosen. Full on. I guess you never encountered Strasbourg, right? Hanging around.
No, I in New York and stuff like that. No.
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
I like the. I mean, obviously he's iconic and stuff like that, but I was firmly in the in the Uta Hagen camp in terms of like acting techniques and stuff like that. I was all in on that. I had both her books. I did all the exercises. That to this day, when actors come to me for advice, I say go get a challenge for the actor, and go get both the Uta Hagen books. They're like $7 on Amazon. They have 9 exercises there you can do by yourself in your house. Start there, and then if you want to read Lee Strasberg, if you want to read this book, I have all of them. I have all the different acting books and stuff like that, But you got to pick the technique that works. You got to pick the style that works for you.
Completely, yeah. And I don't think anyone would have enjoyed being taught by Strasberg. I think he was a very difficult human being.
Yeah.
That's the sense I get. But wonderful. I mean, that's another wonderful piece of casting there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think originally it was going to be Ella Kazan, the guy that was supposed to replace Coppola, was supposed to play that part as well.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to go into a lightning round, Tom. All right, I'm going to ask you a
cool.
couple of different questions, and then there are right answers. There are points involved. All right. Actually, I did notice that you posted some stuff about the John Krasinski show. Some good news, or did link to that. This show comes out during the pandemic. People love it. Like, I'm literally watching the videos and tearing up because it's so emotional. CBS comes in with a boatload of money. And he's like, you know what? I'm out. Is he a sellout?
No, you can't be criticized for selling news to the news.
Right. Okay. So I think he just kind of realized like how much was going into the show in terms of effort, and he was just like, "Oh, you're gonna give me how much? Okay, yeah."
It's not like he's some guy outside the industry. He develops TV for a living. I mean,
All right.
He sells formats.
Who whiffed harder? Okay. Francis Ford Coppola in casting his daughter in GF3, or Carlo when he took that phantom punch when he's beating him over when he's beating Carlo in the parking lot, and Carlo's face is over here, and he's like, whoo! One of the biggest phantom punches in history, right there.
Yeah, but okay, but Sophia Coppola, that's a train wreck from beginning to end. Whereas
Yeah.
at least that scene still has some good stuff in. He throws an industrial broom handle, a sawn off industrial broom handle at him just previously. So you can have a phantom punch or two.
All right. One of them has to go: Monty Python or the Monarchy. Who are you getting rid of?
Oh, the monarchy, no question about it.
Okay.
They should already be gone.
They shouldn't even be a thing anymore. All right. More inappropriate name: Pussy Galore from the Bond films or Dick Buttkiss, NFL player.
Still Pussy Galore.
Pussy Galore is still more inappropriate.
And it was the sixth. I guess who's this? What's his name?
Dick Buttkiss. Dick Buttkiss. When I heard that name when I was a kid, I was like, "There's a football player named Dick Buttkiss? You gotta be fucking kidding me!"
He wasn't around in the '60s.
He played in the '60s and the '70s.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, he was a tight end for the Bears and the Cowboys, I believe.
But
and then he was an NFL announcer.
I still think it's Pussy Galore because how could you ever get away with that?
What other than what side character from The Godfather would you want to see a standalone movie about?
Oh God, that's such a hard question. Tessio, maybe.
Tessio.
Oh, God, I don't know. Because I would really not prepared to answer that. I'm trying to think of someone who really is like a.
Mine would be Luca Brasi, but I think a Luca Brasi movie, like origin story, would be pretty badass. Even though he was a violent motherfucker, but it's still, I think it would be kind of an interesting study.
Yeah,
I'm
gonna stick with Tessio just because it was the first thing that fell into my brain. But
who would play Michael Corleone if the movie was being made today?
A good movie or a bad movie?
All right, let me give you a director. Let's say who's directing it? Who's directing The Godfather if it was done today? Michael Mann.
Michael Mann?
Mm-hmm.
James Caan. James Caan today.
James Caan today. I know. I just got my Social Security check, and I'm taking over the family all in one day. It's a big day for me. Did you get the Metamucil? And let's go ahead and schedule that hit.
My real answer would probably be like, just because he's from the same tradition, someone like Bradley Cooper would probably get cast, right? Or you'd need an Italian. Right.
Yeah, no, I mean they wanted a real like white guy to play him first.
Yeah, Robert Redford.
Redford. Yeah, so that would be kind of like the Robert Redford casting.
Ryan Gosling.
As wow.
He has the stone face, so that would work. But you'd need to dye his hair, and it will probably be brown face, so probably not.
Okay, yeah, that's true. All right, and then the Sopranos ending, just because you brought it up, right?
Yeah.
Tony Soprano, dead or alive at the end of the show?
Alive.
Alive? You're on the alive camp.
Yeah, I think he pulls the guy who comes through the heavyset guy who comes through the door. I think he pulls him down and smashes his face into the jukebox. And
as Don't Stop Believing is playing.
Yeah, exactly. And he's just like, a Meadow's still parallel.
Still trying to parallel park. Yeah.
The police are here and everything, and she's still
parking. I got into such an argument with somebody about that because to me, as a filmmaker, like he's, even if it leaves it ambiguous, he's still spelling everything out to you. Point of view shot, bell, we see what Tony sees. Point of view shot, we hear the bell, then we see what Tony hears. Point of view shot, the only time there's movement in that entire scene by a camera is when we follow the guy that gets up and goes. That's the only camera movement that there is. Everything else is static shots, and it's always in the same pattern. So I think when you hear the bell, you see, and then you see what Tony look up and then what he sees is darkness. I think it's pretty cut and dry, but I think as a fan of the series, you almost want to have that hope. It's almost like he wanted to kill him off, but he also was like, yeah, but if I do it all the way, you know, hey, that's just my thought on it.
No, I think it's like he set out the basic ingredients, and it's up to you to put it all together. But it was kind of to me it was the sort of disappointment. There was a lot of mini disappointments in that episode anyway. I don't know how you have the finale of The Sopranos without Dr. Melfi in it at all. That was
right.
that was the bigger misstep for me. And while I kind of appreciated it on an experimental level, you know, music is such a crucial part of The Sopranos, and to have a credit sequence at the end without music to me is like.
And he wanted it to be longer. He wanted it to be a full. He wanted it to be a full minute. He wanted it to be a full minute black and then silence on the credits. You know. So it was just like, but I will admit that I've rewatched The Sopranos probably about 6 or 7 times all the way through, and I skip most of the Dr. Melfi stuff on subsequent rewatches. I kind of like it as a more tight mob story without it. Then I sort of miss some things going through it, but I don't have the patience to sit through the entire therapy sessions anymore for some reason.
Interesting. Yeah. It's just like, you know, that's the central relationship that the whole thing is based around, and I don't know. It's just weird Tony being out there on his own with no psychotherapy.
It's a weird show altogether. And then finally, Tom, what's next? What's next for you, man?
Godfather One part. We have a live week next week. I'll be doing deleted scenes from the second half of the movie, and then one more week of videos. Then we're done. So there'll be a wrap up and our watch party on Facebook. So look out for that. Lonesome Whistle Productions, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. And then I'm doing my first podcast with a good friend and colleague, Michael Shantz. We're doing a podcast called Everything Sequel, where we analyze the sequels of movies, and we take a series of sequels each week. We'll see how it breaks down. But we're starting off with Superman 2, 3, and 4. Then we move on to Jaws.
Are you doing all the sequels?
We're going to do all the sequels of a given movie, yeah. So we do a lot of multiple sequels. If there's like one sequel for a movie, we will do that. But we'll try and match it up with something similar. So we have 1 week where we've got another Stakeout and another 48 Hours examined side by side.
Okay.
And we find out that they're basically the same movie.
Listen, I mean, there's only a certain amount of stories that need to be told. Full disclosure, though, I am getting ahead of myself in terms of recording these podcasts, and I'm getting a new editing PC probably within the next week or so. So after that, I'll start churning them out in terms of being that. So I don't know how it's going to coincide with that, but I think people
will probably be up and running by that point. But it's brand new.
But people do. I mean, if you are a fan of just art, acting, monologues in general, make sure that you guys check out Tom's projects. The Bond Show, I think you can watch on Facebook, because I caught a Facebook video of it. And even if this comes out a little bit after the project is done, no reason you can't go back and just sort of let it play in the background. I see it pop up in my YouTube feed when I click on my homepage and see the new videos, and I'm like, oh, another little 2 minutes of Godfather for me here. Let me go ahead and just watch through this. So I think it's honestly, I think it's a really impressive project, as I told you. And, if you need to have somebody on to talk about House Party 2 on your new podcast, go ahead and let me know.
Yeah. Well, we're recruiting guests, and absolutely. We'll look into that.
Yeah, let me know, man. I mean, anything, or what is, I don't know. I'm trying to think of what sequels do I know the most about. I'd have to think about that. Maybe American Ninja, something like that. I don't know. There's a lot out there. But I appreciate you coming on and talking to me, man. It was a very informative conversation. Moved pretty well. I think it went well. So thank you very much for coming on, man.
My pleasure. Thank you. It was fascinating.
Cool. And I will keep up in touch with you and let you know when this will actually be dropped. Okay. I do have a request next time that you are recording. I was hoping that maybe you would do like a promo for the show as the Don the next time that you record. Would you be able to do that for me? That is my
100%.
Okay,
100%. Yeah. You tell me what you want me to say, and
got it. I'll shoot you a message. Something basic. Just hey, this is the Don. I was a guest on blah blah blah. The Fireside Chats. He's a large Colombian male. I don't know from him too much, but I don't know. We'll figure something out.
I better tell him right away because he's a man who doesn't. He wants to hear bad news immediately.
You're gonna have to. All right, yeah. I got to do what now? I'll do it live.
He's a man who insists on hearing bad news immediately.
All right. Well, like I said, thank you very much for coming on, brother. I will be talking to you soon. This has been Fireside Chats with Big Chief Burrito. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to Tom's new podcast about sequels. Watch his Godfather in one part, and be on the lookout for this man either on stage or screen. And if they look for you, I'm sure they can find your IMDb, book you through Facebook, etc. Correct?
I'm on IMDb. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Tom Steward on Facebook or Lonesome Productions. It's all the same.
I did watch your other movie, Just Desserts, as well, with the casual child murder, as well. So
that's my specialty.
That's yeah.
That's the special skills. The casual child murder.
I have a movie called Shenanigans, and one of the things that we described it was themes of infanticide. So not as popular a theme as it once was back in the days, but still something there. All right, well, Tom, thank you very much, man. I'll let you go. I've held you too long. You have a good rest of your evening, and thanks everybody for watching, man. Peace.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing this, man. I'll talk to you soon.
You're welcome. Thanks. It was so much fun.
Cool. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.